Telluride gets established in 1870, mining community. What's the biggest issues? Sustainability. I mean, they're just a bunch of miners came over Imogene Pass and started mining. When you look at the town of Telluride, you look at those little 25-foot lots. When you look in just our community, we had San Miguel, we had Pandora, we had Telluride, we had all of those vying for workers. And they slept in tents. From 1870 to 1940, almost all the mining here was for gold and silver. What happened in 41? World War II. They banned gold mining, and Telluride, like no other place in the San Juans, had something that they really had mined for 90 years. Copper, lead, and zinc. That sustained us. That was the sustainability of Telluride from 1941 until 1978.
Yeah, I spent 25 years in the mine, and it was a real fun time working in the mine. Most people think it's pretty hazardous, and during my time, there was 28 guys lost their lives. I was lucky I didn't. I came to Telluride in I believe the first time was in 1931 and 32. We came from another mining town, Bonanza, Colorado. In our family there were 6 boys, no girls. They were not allowed. You know, it was Depression time. Nobody had any money, no jobs. My brother found a pair of skis in some old barn. We always fought over those skis to ski on Catholic Hill over here. That was our ski run. I believe in 1937, 38, we had a fellow by the name of Bruce Palmer. He was a school teacher and an avid skier. And he actually got us kids interested in fine-tune our skiing, which never did happen very much.
He was the person, along with the kids, my dad and his brothers and the Goldsworthys, who built the first rope tow over by the beaver ponds. And Bruce, he was the first. I was talking with my father yesterday about this, to try to build a world-class ski area back in the mid-30s. Well, obviously it didn't happen, but they kept trying after that. And the next rope tow was in Town Park, Firecracker Hill. And in the beginning, it was a car jacked up, and the back wheel was taken off, and a double rim, and the rope went up through a shiv assembly, and they started the car up and got it in gear and shifted gears into second. And I was a little bitty kid, and I remember if I was on the rope tow when they shifted gears, I was done. It knocked me down. I could not hang on to save myself.
That only lasted one season, because it went across a railroad track, and the goose came in and cut the rope in two, and that was the end of the boat tow.
I'm thinking it was in the early 60s.
It was.
When we moved from Town Park down to Grizzly Gulch. And there was a reason for that, is because my father knew that would be where the ski area would be, and if we had something there, at least we had some way to show people we can build a ski area here, and this will be a ski run on that ski area someday.
The belief that we would have a ski resort, the Elks Club in the community in about the middle 60s put together, I think it was $10,000 to do a feasibility study. At that time, if we could have built a chairlift at Camel's Garden, that would have been heaven. They put together, I think it was $10,000 or $12,000, gave it to a consultant, he stole it and left town.
And this is a really interesting story, because when Joe Zoline came to town, my father told me this story a couple days ago. When he originally came here, he met with the Rotary Club. And the only business that was open as a restaurant was the Roma. Everything else was closed up in Telluride. And he was not treated very kindly, because they just thought he was another guy to come in and get their $10,000 and hit the road. And so he did not get a warm welcome from the Rotary Club. And after the meeting, Kate Mulvey, who owned the Roma, Joe went up to Kate Mulvey and said, "Kate, what should I do?" And she said, "You should talk to Billy Mahoney." And so he met my dad, and they went from there. And he bought the property, and we started. I remember the day I think I was a freshman in college. My sister was sophomore in high school, and my dad came home and said, "I want to talk to everybody." So we sat down at the dinner table, and he said, "I'm thinking of quitting the mine and going to work for Joe Zoline to build a ski area." And I can tell you, the silence at our dinner table was incredible. It was like, well, how's that going to work? We know this mine's going to be here forever. which obviously didn't happen, but, that was quite the day in our lives when my dad said, we're going to work for the ski area. He was always, the leader of, let's go skiing, so he was the natural choice of a local person to be involved in the ski area. Plus, he knew the terrain better than anybody, because when we were kids, we hiked all the terrain and skied it, and then when they invented snowmobiles, that was like heaven.
Well, when Joe hired me in 1970, he gave me the title of mountain manager, and we run snowcat tours for 2 years.
We were the single worst ski resort in North America. No transportation system, no bed base, no population base close to it, but God, we had a dream. When we launched our first lifts, there were less than 30 rooms in the entire Telluride area. There was the Sheridan, and then over here at the Tomboy called the Valley View. Who in the hell would launch a resort with 32 pillows?
And so we built lifts in the summer of, I believe it was 72, and opened in December of 72.
That was probably the biggest thrill of my life. We didn't have to walk up the hill.
Next year we put in 5 lifts, and in 75 we put in another lift, and then this boy came to town, Mr. Allred.
A friend of mine in Vail, I was having lunch with him one day, happened to be a guy by the name of Pete Seibert. Some of you may have known him. He was kind of the guru in the ski industry in America at the time. He said, well, have you been to Telluride? I said, no. He said, well, that'll get you excited.
He shows up, can't ski a lick. This man is in the Colorado Ski Hall of Fame, and he still can't ski. Figure that out. He said, I think this resort can be one of the top 10 year-round resorts in North America. And I said, I like stretch goals. I said, I'm kind of thinking about becoming a concert pianist or perhaps an astronaut.
And Johnny's right, we were the worst ski area in North America because we didn't know what we were doing, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. But the one thing everybody had here was heart. They wanted this so bad. And so we all worked hard, and so did Joe, until he sold. And then we worked even harder.
So this was in 77. And in 77, one of the greatest events in my whole life occurred, which I married my wife, Joyce. I didn't tell her that I was going to buy this ski resort. Because she would then want to know where it is, and she'd want to come see it and stuff like that. And I didn't know if I didn't want to complicate things. So I didn't tell her. And after we got married, and we were married for a while, about a year, I told her, I says, well, we just bought this potential ski area, and we're going to move there. So I take her down here, and it didn't look real good here. I mean, the mountains look just like they do now, but it didn't look real good. And she says to me, I can't live here. There's no way I can live here. So anyway, that was my first crisis. So I finally come up with an idea that, I'm going to lie to her and tell her this is only going to take 5 years. And so if you just stay here for 5 years, then we'll go live wherever you want. And she bought into that. And my hope was that she'd start loving it. And after a couple of years, she did. So, but it was a little rough at the beginning. So the year we came here was the year that the mine just shut down. This was a town that was dying. It was, the only economy was the mine. And then one day, that tap turned off. And it was pretty dramatic.
Mining don't last forever, fellas. And I knew that. And so something had to change here in Telluride. And thank God it was the ski area that made the difference.
This town, if it wasn't a ski area or a resort, a new economy, that it had no future. And it kind of worked at just the timing just worked that way, and it wasn't planned. But now I got to tell you, during those years, the first 15 years that I was my wife and I were in town, I was public enemy number one.
It was a little bit lonely for a while, but one by one, as we started building one piece of that master plan that we got approval for, people started thinking, well, maybe. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe it will now. And then a few years later, it's like, well, I don't know. It's starting to look pretty good here. And then after a number of years, it was like, it was their idea.
There was always a plan for sort of a village, a small one, but when Ron came here, it all changed and became what Mountain Village is today. It was fairly immediate that we saw that things were changing and we were growing and our skier days were growing. And then in 1985, we started building the Mountain Village. And then it was like, you know, work every day as hard as you could. And I mean, we built all the infrastructure for the Mountain Village, roads and sewer, power, everything. And things were changing rapidly. And quite frankly, the biggest change of all is when you could probably say, yeah, we're here for real, is when the airport was built.
We didn't know one thing about building an airport, and we had only X number of dollars that we thought we could spend on this. We get this bid comes in, and we're $10 million over our budget. And so I go out to Sacramento, where the FAA office was, and I sit down and say, guys, the thing that's causing all this cost is this huge ravine that went right across the middle of the runway from south to north. And by the time we fill it up, it just costs too much money. They finally called me back in and they said, well, look, you can build the runway like this. Do you remember that? Okay? And you just go down in that hole, not all the way down, but go down in it, and it'll be okay. And I said, guys, that doesn't seem right. What? Are you sure this will work? Can planes fly in and out of here? Oh yeah, don't worry about it. That's okay. So we built it that way, and it opened. Mm-hmm. And planes were coming in, going out, and but it operated for, I don't know, quite a few years like that,
It was a lot of fun riding in the planes and listening to the people when they had the commercial flights. Oh man.
And it was very obvious that if you're going to build a town where the Mountain Village is, and you got this old historic town, and there's 7.2 miles by road, that we better find a transportation system between those two communities, because there's going to be a lot of people going back and forth. We really were studying what was going on in Europe, because Europe was so far ahead of the American ski industry in terms of their resorts. They were 20 years ahead of us, or 25.
So Joyce Allred, Ron Allred, Terry Fernald, myself, and Ike Schisler go over to Europe to just see what's there. And we meet with the French, because we know where we need to go. We need to go 26 minutes. A chairlift wouldn't work. And the French went, you know what? We got a chairlift that'll go 1,000 feet a minute. That is what you're riding right now, 13 minutes. We went, really? So we went up to this place called Vougenet, and they had their first prototype detachable chairlift. Instead of being rubber tire driven and rubber belts, it was driven by chains. It sounded like the goddamn thing was going to blow up. But we knew now, isn't that right, Ron? That all came together. We could be there in 13 minutes. We could build intervals. We could build capacity. We were the first that customed a gondola in the world, because we knew we needed 3 sections. We knew all this sort of stuff. It took us about 3 or 4 years later. Joyce is over there. We're going through all these factories. And Joyce is the one woman in these factories with men in Europe that have been there for 40 years. And they'd see good-looking Joyce come in. They were doing cat calls and whistling, and they just loved Joyce going through those factories. And when we fly back, she goes, if I never see a chairlift factory, my life will be soon enough. She went through every one of them.
The only thing that really worked was really the gondola. It almost broke our company doing it, but it's there.
To fund that, the ski company, they knew that if we were going to get the ridership year-round, 12 months out of the year, it actually is about 10 and a half, if you could fund it without charging people to get on it every time, it would be much more successful. So also fortuitously, we were so early in the development of the Mountain Village that we were able to take the development of the Mountain Village, the real estate, and the finances that came with it. So we could finance it as though it was free. Had there not been the Mountain Village, had there not been the vision, because the gondola came in concert with the Mountain Village. And that to me was as difficult as the construction of the gondola, but the foresight and then the ability to fund that in conjunction with the development of the Mountain Village was again another one of those things that some would say is lucky. 2014, I think there were something like 2.1 million rides on the gondola. That, I don't care who it was, me included, that utilization so exceeds what we'd even envisioned. And the good thing about it is you can continue to add capacity to it. So you got the frequency. So it was absolutely the perfect deal.
I knew it was going to happen. I had believed in it. I had to believe in it. And not having good access was a negative back then. But today, I knew someday it would become an asset. As long as we don't grow too much, all the rest of the things are going to fall in place, I think.
Telluride has changed. It went from the small little mining shacks to these multi-million-dollar homes, you know. I'll have to tell you, I bought my first house through Ida Mining Company, and I built it for $6,000. Bought the lot for $4. And that, I guess that's the sad thing about the way the town turned out. All the price of property. Most people can't live here if they don't have a sugar daddy or something.
It's all about figuring out some way to do housing where people can afford to be here. That is what we need to fix.
It's the core of the Mountain Village that I think, and there's probably 7 or 8 sites, the Grand Hotel being one of them, and the most prominent one, but there's probably 7 or 8 other additional sites, and I think they all should be built out, and we need to finish that. It's all zoned, we might as well, we should get it over with, and so there's no more building going on. What it does is it really hurts the merchants up there. They are in a way cheated because we didn't do that. And so I'm very strong about that. We need to help those people. And we need to finish the ski mountain. The ski mountain hasn't done anything for a long time. And it was approved to do a lot more, a heck of a lot more. And work with the community to get some more affordable housing, find more ways to help people that are in this community working every day so they have a better life and their children have a better future. When we do that, we will be #1 in the world. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And we're gonna, you know what? We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We have to get there. It's our destiny. We have to be the #1 in the world.
If you're doing nothing, you're going backwards. And Telluride does not deal with a high volume. So what we deal with needs to work for the businesses and the enterprise and the tax base. And I quite frankly think right now, what we've done over the last 40 years is a pretty incredible balance. You know, I look back on it, it's been incredibly fun, incredibly rewarding to think that you can help transition the town you were raised in to what is now considered to be one of the great resorts in North America.
How many people in the world get to build a ski area and a town? And our family got to do that.